Hello, welcome to the 52nd episode of the series Decolonizing the Mind. I'll deal today with the question how the Zionist state of Israel might end. And in order to discuss this question, we need to have an idea of how to look at the concept of a state. Now, a state, the basic characteristic of a state is a, a state apparatus, a government apparatus that govern a society within a distinct geographical area. That government apparatus consists of Secret Service, army, police, and the administrative apparatus to govern a society and a state. These are basic characteristics, but there are special characteristics that define different types of states. For example, the economic basis of a state. An agrarian state is different from an industrial state. The economic basis, where a state is based mostly on agriculture, that could be large private owned plots, it could be small peasantry, is different than an industrial state based on industries, cities, etc. So the economic base can define the nature of a state. Then the social basis can also define the nature of a state. Do you have a nation state, a state in which within the geographical area there's only one ethnic group? Or is it a pluriversal state with different ethnic groups, with different civilizational backgrounds? What is the class nature of the state? Is it a slave state? We know the existence of slaves during colonialism and before. Is it a liberal state based on the concept of individuals, or is it a worker state, a socialist state based on the concept of class? So the social basis defines the nature of the state. And then the political basis. You have in the West states that developed in opposition to the Christian church and where the separation of church of state became a dogma. And these are secular states, but there are non-secular states based on religion, based on ethics, like in Confucianism. You have Islamic states or Hindu states or Buddhist states. So they have a particular view of how the political basis of a state is organized. For example, you have also the colonial state that is controlled, where colonial societies, colonized societies are controlled by a colonizer state, an imperial state, a colonial state, of which a government apparatus resides in the colonizer state and then its representatives to govern the colonial state. And through achieving political independence, you can regain control by the indigenous population or its elites of that state. And in general, we could say you could have a just state and unjust states based on the concept of social justice. For example, the Islamic states during the period of the Prophet Muhammad claims to be a just state based on justice. Some Hindu empires, claim to be based on justice. Buddhist states claim to be based on justice. A socialist states claims to be based on justice. So the nature of justice defines also the nature of a state. And then you have the civilizational cultural basis of a state. Eurocentric states are based on the knowledge production of the European Enlightenment. Other states can be based on other ideology. Now, if we look at a Zionist state, you could say that the state apparatus of the Zionists rests on international support. The United States every year puts in $3 billion at a minimum. Now it's way much more than that, to pop up the Zionist state, to support it economically, militarily, with intelligence, not only by the United States, but also by the West in general. The geographical nature of the states is uncertain. The occupation of Palestine, and they want to control the whole of Palestine, but they lost control over Gaza. When they were forced to withdraw from Gaza, they couldn't occupy the whole of West Bank, although they are doing their best to do that. The political basis is apartheid. It's a Jewish state based on the ideology of Zionism, and it's based on racism, the separation of Jews from non-Jews, in how a state is treated. And apartheid is the political basis of the state. So what does it mean to say a state is ended? It means that you end one or more characteristics of a state. For example, the Soviet state ended and it split into different states. It ended the geographical control of all the Soviet republics. And after the dissolution of the Soviet Republic, each republic became a known state in its own right. Then the German Democratic Republic, the dissolution of the states in all aspects took place, and there is no state. It went up in the unification with West Germany. In South Africa, the geography became the same, but the political basis structure and the social structure, apartheid, and political structure on free elections were changed. So the state changed, although the land, the geography didn't stay. Now, if we talk about the end of the Zionist state, you should have some imagination to imagine that the state can be ended. And history gives us a lot of examples. The Ottoman state, the Habsburg Empire, the Russian Tsarist state, the Soviet state, the German Democratic Republic, the apartheid state of South Africa, many colonized, hundreds of colonized states which have been ended in the political dimension. North and South Vietnam, this separate state became one state. So there are many examples of states ending. And how do states end? In some case, a geographical area and state apparatus is split into separate republics like the Soviet Union. In some cases, there's a unification of separate states like the German Democratic Republic and West Germany, North and South Vietnam. You could have the dissolution of state. The state doesn't exist anymore like DDR and Soviet Union. Or you could add specific characteristic of a state like in South Africa. How do states end? Basically through war, revolutions, and peaceful transitions. And we know examples of war. World War I ended, the Ottoman Empire ended, the Habsburg Empire ended, the Tsarist Empire. So war, revolution, the Russian Revolution ended the Tsarist Empire also from within. The Cuban Revolution ended the Cuban capitalist state, and then you have peaceful transitions like in South Africa, which was preceded by non-peaceful means, by the way, and in order to prevent further extension of violent revolutions. Now, going back to the Zionist state, how can we imagine how this state will end? First of all, we need to imagine that it can end. History shows us that injustice can be ended as long as people are fighting against injustice. So the Zionist state based on injustice can end. In order to see how it can end, we should look at what was already tried. The two-state solution was a peaceful way of ending the armed resistance, but it didn't come through. It seemed to be impossible. Instead, it extended the occupation of the Zionists of Palestine. Now, the peaceful dismantling of the apartheid state, you could say, oh, the Jewish state will distract itself, remove the Jewish identity of the state, and allow for a state of multiple ethnic groups to be able to function freely. That's impossible because the Israel was based on and presented as a Jewish state, and its social basis is land for the Jewish people. So leaving that and dismantling that state, the social basis, ideological basis, I don't see that happening. So the only way is armed resistance. But then the armed resistance organized by the PLO for decades ended in a failure. And the PLO became an extended part of the Zionist state in controlling the Jewish population. And it was based on the belief that the Jewish state is so strong that it is invincible, and therefore armed resistance is futile, and you just have to accept that armed resistance will lead to nothing. And here comes the meaning of October 7. October 7 shows that there is the possibility of armed resistance is still there. The Jewish state is not invincible, and armed resistance is not only within the geographical areas of Palestine. There is an axis of resistance, a strong axis of resistance. So the war against Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, is a war that extends the boundaries of Palestine. So how will it end at the end of the day? The only possible end is the liberation of land. It is about land. And the land is from the river to the sea. So now, if you understand that the final liberation is the liberation of land, you have to imagine how will the land be liberated. And for now, history shows that there are many possibilities we couldn't imagine. And with the imagination from now, based on historical parallels, I would argue that the Zionists will leave the land if they are defeated on the land. And that means that if the axis of resistance is able to take land, the current land, then the Zionists will leave. Of course, some section of it will fight till the end, but at the end of the day, they will leave by thousands back to Europe and the USA. And then the question is, how can they be defeated on the land? And what we are seeing now since October 7, basically, that defeat will be in the destruction of the military infrastructure of the state, with bombs, which is happening now in the north of Israel, in the south of Israel, with Lebanon, the invasion of land by Muslim fighters from the axis of resistance, which is not there yet, the elimination of the threat of nuclear war with the nuclear shield of Russia, China, and Pakistan. So if Israel threats with nuclear war, these countries might step in. And if they don't step in, what will happen after the first nuclear bomb that they would find? The whole world will change with a nuclear bomb of Israel on Iran or Lebanon or whatever. It will change the whole world. So, and then once the instability and the fighting goes on, part of the Jewish population, probably a large part, will flight back to Europe and the USA. So the question is, when will the Zionists say it? And we can't put a date on it, obviously. But suppose that there's a ceasefire, and the Zionists are forced to accept a ceasefire. That ceasefire will not last long, because the two-state solution will not come about. So the ceasefire is the preparation for a new wave of armed resistance. There might not be a ceasefire because Netanyahu and a large part of his establishment thinks that this war is an existential war. So they might take the risk to let it grow into a regional war. And basically, that means the end of the state of Israel if this regional war turns towards the occupation, the liberation, the reoccupation, of, better said, the liberation of Palestine by Muslim forces across the whole of Western Asia. That is what we should be prepared to see that is going to happen. So that's it for now. You could download this PowerPoint at www.sundayhero.com, and if you want to support the DTM channel, subscribe to it, share it with friends, family, and colleagues, and encourage them to subscribe. Get involved in discussion group, and if you want to make a donation, go at sundayhero.com to see how you can do it. So thank you very much, and hope to see you next time.